SGS Afrika Korps is a computer game I know the existence of only because the publisher sent it to me. So merci Avalon Digital, as I would say in my native language. The game is of course from a strange niche. It is a computer interpretation of a real board game also named Afrika Korps, published in the 60s by Avalon Hill Games. And despite the names, it seems there's no other connections between the two companies. As the name implies, it covers a very specific time frame in the arid, desertic wasteland that is Northern Africa. The game has a few different scenarios you can cover with different start dates, position, victory conditions, and turn limits. It does give you some replayability to the game, as you can experience a bit wider area of conflict, and it also grants you the chance to play as the Desert Fox or the Desert Rats. Now, I'll have to admit something to you. I don't think I can do a fair review of the game, and solely due to life circumstances. I am simply unable to schedule a proper multiplayer game, and this game is most probably much better against a human competition. So if you are like me and cannot find a friend hassled enough to play a game and you are stuck playing against the computer, I think the experience is somewhat degraded playing against it. And I played against the AI on Advance, but since the option is buried in the menu, I did not realize before being 8 hours into playing this game that there's an expert level, and honestly it didn't feel much different at that point. It may be a little bit more resistant, but that's about it. Generally speaking, playing against the AI, it just lets you do big pockets cutoffs and rarely tries to outflank you. Only if the chance is right in their face, so that generally let me down a bit on the game. I never really felt challenged by the AI, and if I did it, I would just bypass them to get to the objective real quick. So let's talk more about that. As mentioned earlier, each scenario has a different amount of turns to complete. Each turn will have a similar kind of rollout. Each turn, whether you're the Axis or the Allies, plays out the same. It starts with drawing 2 cards, and you can play general cards during that period, like Churchill visiting or Mussolini interfering, which blocks your opponent from playing cards for the next turn. Or you can also play cards with historical moments like the launch of Barbarossa or Pearl Harbor, or rebuilding Benghazi, which has an impact on reinforcement during the scenarios. You also need to discard cards if you have too many in your hands at that point. It gets the reinforcement phase, where you can play cards to get new units, or some new one will pop up from the scenarios, and you also usually get a chance to repair a damaged unit somewhere back to full health. Then the next turn will bring you up into moving your air forces around. You can either move them to new air base or set them up for an attack or bomb run. There are different types of airplanes, from bombers to recon to fighters and dive bombers. Each are a little bit different in the way they act. The recon plane will let you see a bit farther on the map, letting you know what's coming up, and in combat it will fight a bit, but is wholly insufficient. Next up we have the fighters and dive bombers. Both are able to fight into every round of a combat, and the dive bombers can do a small bombard bonus at the start. Dedicated bombers on their end can only bomb once during a battle at the start, but they have a special strategic bombing option that allows them to overpass enemies in order to strike behind the lines, which can be ideal to soften up fortifications behind the enemy front line. Then we get to the interesting phase. We can move our troops around and set up battles. So you have just to make sure your troop composition doesn't look like too gobbledygook like the manual probably suggests. But I am a fast action man, so I can't be inconvenienced by doing proper research, so I'll give it to you as I get it. Composition is only important in a way. If you have an army made up of Italians only, I'm sorry man, but you better put some salt in that pasta water cause their morale is incapable of handling a single big battle without running away. So you better pack up some good Germans with them in your provincial speaking riffraff. They will at least tell them which way to face for the remaining of the battle. If you prefer the inelegant side and pick the allies, you won't really have the same problem, but if you get some Straya lads, seems like nothing can put them down, like stray dogs or something. They're tough as nail. I guess after all, it might have been the first time in their lives they're not worried about dying to some weird disease or spider bite, so that probably explains everything you have to know about these Straya lads. So now you finish your turn by moving your troops around and setting up some battles, then move on to the combat phase. Now I know you will tell me just RTFM to understand, but I just can't be worried about that. So while I have an unexcusable misunderstanding of the combat mechanics, I'll still be able to tell you enough to let you know how it works. First, depending on the unit types on each side of the round, it will be a little bit different how it rolls out. If you have combat cards like double artillery strikes or Stukas, you'll gain some bonus for the current battle. Other fun cards like Italian Demoralization can wipe out an entire enemy assault in one go. After playing the cards both sides, you will have your bombers and dive bomber going on to getting a chance to attack. Then artillery will have a free strike chance, and finally if you have some land reconnaissance vehicles, they'll get a free hit on the enemy. After that, most units will start fighting turn by turn. Now I know I should have read the fucking manual at this point, but I didn't, so let me explain you how combat really works. You have a series of numbers that will show up all over the place, but the only important thing to know is the yellow numbers, because the yellow numbers mean there was a hit. Now I don't know why they have big numbers that are not yellow, since all numbers that are yellow, but when you see a yellow number on your side of the screen, you're probably winning. Each unit will also have a health bar, some health point bar with them, and when they reach 0, they die. It's just that sad, like real life or something. And finally, we also have a little digit that shows up on the screen, and this is morale. And when the morale reach 0, the unit just runs away. And basically, from what I think morale is the number of turns they can actually fight before running out. And finally, the last important thing about the battles to know about is if you have a special phase guy in your army or some tanks, then you'll get the chance to have an initiative to keep the assault going. So you'll be able to take most of your units that were engaged in a battle, usually meaning non-supply and non-artillery, and move them again following the battle, allowing you to pursue the enemy into the deepest depth of the trenches around Tobruk, and where you can finally lay a big smacking like the siege of Tobruk. If you stop and think about Tobruk, I'm not even sure I realize who was holding it the most, who was sieging it the most. The funny thing about Tobruk, it just sounds like, you know, a kid's game and stuff, but it was actually one of the largest tank battle that was ever done, before of course Kursk, which thanks again to Battlefield 1942 for giving me all the right information about the historical accuracy of the games. And this pretty much wraps it up for the entire combat. Following the combat, you'll have another round of moving your airplanes around where you can relocate them to different air bases or set them up as defensive position against wherever you expect the enemy to put some pressure into the assault against you. Of course, if you are doing just like I said and playing against the AI, it's not really something that will come up into your game plans, so you don't really have to bother about defending much, because the AI appears to be very mentally inept to actually do proper assault, and will just kind of attack wherever it seems like they have chances, but they don't really, because it's all a big setup for them. And then you finish that little putting your planes wherever you want, and the enemy gets their own turn to play. eventually, with the more you play, the more you understand, the more you learn, the more you like the game, you'll eventually reach the objective that you are given for that specific scenario, and you'll be able to, how to put it nicely, have fun. But anyway, as I mentioned prior, I think this game is best experienced if you're actually playing against human competition. So if you have a friend who probably has enough money to purchase also the game, which judging from previous games from Haviland Software Game Development Digital, it seems like it appears to me to be a little bit pricey. But I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that buy board game, because board games, man, you gotta be fucking rich to buy that shit. So I guess virtual board games is kind of the same weird niche I was talking about, and we're staying around in the same discipline where it actually becomes much less expensive when you stop and think about it, because you don't have to buy 50 different expansion sets for your one board game. But hopefully you've enjoyed this quick review of SGS Afrika Korps, and if you did, make sure to drop a subscribe and like for more. I know, I haven't been making much video for quite some times now, but you know, that's just life circumstances. I can't set up playing online board games. You think I can set up playing games to make videos? It sounds like quite a challenge to me, but I always love making videos every day, just going on to my crazy life like that. Hopefully you did really enjoy. Make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.